Morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Ana Urgoiti. I work in WFP in Panama, and I have been kindly invited by this working group to help you facilitating this session today. I think we are going to have a very good EPE session today. We have a lot of participants subscribed, and we have a very good group of facilitators already online that are going to help us navigating through the agenda. So the title of this session is "We Can All Do It." That looks like a very good slogan for what is coming next. Then we are going to start the session with a first session looking at some government testimonies on national evaluation capacity development. And we are going to have a small presentation on the overview of the report that was recently released. Then we have three special guests that are going to present us testimonials from different evaluation experiences from different UN agencies. And then we are going to have a small group discussions in 4 different rooms that I will explain later on, not now. And then by the end of this session, we will do a wrap up, and we are going to talk about what is going to happen next with this working group and which are the plans they have. So if everybody is on board and ready to go. Okay, so I would like one participant to help me reading this quote from the government of Gabon.
In Gabon, we are in the process of institutionalizing evaluation, but need to strengthen our capacities and seize every opportunity to raise the evaluation culture in our country, starting from the technical structure and ministries, the decentralized administrations, and civil society. Our involvement in the steering committee of the evaluation of the country programming framework of FAO Gabon is particularly positive. It gives us the opportunity to follow closely the different steps of the evaluation and allow us to take ownership not only of the evaluation results, but also of the approaches and methods, which differ from one agency to another. We hope as a next step to be able to do an evaluation of a national agricultural program or policy and benefit from the technical support of UN agencies interested in this sector.
The joint evaluation with WFP in Namibia brought about greater ownership of the national school feeding program. This ownership in return ensured higher accountability of the project, which makes the implementation easier, as there is greater community understanding. Gibson Munene, Education Inspector, Ministry of Arts and Culture, Government of Namibia.
What I would like to emphasize with this joint evaluation, I thought, is the flexibility and capacity to listen of both parties, whether through midterm and final evaluation. This is what made it possible to learn and act effectively facing the COVID pandemic. Elise Oussou, Head of School Feeding, Ministry of Nursery and Primary Education, Government of Menen.
Those were 3 testimonies from 3 different governments. And now I would like to hand over to Michael.
It's great to have this opportunity to present the report. Essentially, the idea here is to provide a brief overview of what the UNEG group focused on in this area of national evaluation capacity development has produced with the leadership of Ian Goldman, who's here with us today. So Ian, if I make any missteps, please feel free to jump in. This was the result of a very collaborative effort with Ian's leadership, and maybe just jumping to the next slide. The background here is really a General Assembly resolution that was passed in 2014, I believe. It, of course, built on a lot of previous work by the international community in the area of national evaluation capacity development, including a resolution dating back to 2004 that called on UNEG to really emphasize the responsibility and leadership of governments for evaluating their national priorities, as well as the Paris Declaration and other kind of key normative events, and that eventually led to this at first and standalone resolution on evaluation capacities, which, as you can see here, put a lot of emphasis on calling on the UN to support member states in country-led processes for increasing their capacity in evaluation areas. So that's really the kind of the reason that this group was convened to first of all understand what are some of the key changes and developments since this resolution was passed, and try to provide also a kind of a forward-looking component for not only a new General Assembly resolution that's under negotiation on the same topic or similar topic, but also overall on how the UN can continue to work in this area effectively. So the working group was tasked to prepare this report. As I mentioned, Ian Goldman was the lead consultant, and just a quick few notes here on the approach, which included a literature review, a survey of UN agencies. I believe 14 responded out of 53 UNEG members, so not quite a representative sample, but a good cross-section of those that are active in this space. And then some interviews were conducted, and some country case studies that really try to capture the differential context in which NECD efforts are carried out. One of the first tasks that the group really took on, and that's reflected well in the final report, was articulating a definition of what national evaluation capacity development means. So here you see it's really defined as a process that both state and non-state entities and individuals in which they're expanding, reinforcing, sustaining national capacity to demand, manage, produce, and use evaluation. So it's quite a big chain of different elements there that are linked to national priorities. So as the General Assembly resolution clearly states, that are really supporting the evaluation of national priorities, and ultimately looking to strengthen governance through both accountability, learning, and eventually contributing to higher development and peace outcomes, as we'll see shortly in a theory of change. There's also an emphasis on the importance and centrality of individual skills and knowledge, as well as an enabling environment in really creating a conducive evaluation culture. And finally, also here, the fact that a NECD kind of is circumscribed within a country-owned national system that is defined by its own cultural, social, and political context. Finally, here, the last point, it points to that this is really focused at the national level, of course, as indicated in the name, but supported through other actions at the subnational level and beyond at the regional and global level. So with that definition in mind, the group and the report articulated this theory of change, which we won't go into detail, but you can see that there's emphasis starting at the higher level in really driving, as I mentioned, development outcomes more broadly through using evaluations as evidence. So really this kind of broader evidence-informed decision making. It could also be a theory of change for that in many ways. But where I think it's interesting to focus on is this kind of middle layer in which the enabling environment is articulated both from an institutional level as well as individual level. You have state actors that are there kind of in the center, which was a point of debate among the team, but very much complemented by non-state actors such as VOPEs and other key stakeholders in this space. And then finally at the bottom, a number of expectations in which UNEG members would be providing support to really drive the production of quality evaluations that will lead to these higher level outcomes, including through diagnostics, including through technical assistance, advocacy, training, and other activities. So just a brief overview there, and of course it's a gross simplification of how complex this area can really be. As I mentioned, a survey was conducted, and here you have a representation of what the report calls direct support to national evaluation capacity development, which really means, is kind of the focus of that activity by any particular UN partner. And here we can see the largest kind of contribution is to support individual capacity development, which is being done in 12 of 14 UNEG members that responded to this survey. So it really is the most common, followed by a kind of tranche of 3 other areas around facilitating the participation of non-state actors in evaluation in national evaluation system, advocacy and raising awareness around the importance of evidence and its production, as well as a number of activities related to being an evaluation champion. And then a smaller group focused on the nuts and bolts of a national evaluation system, so the policies, regulations, plans, frameworks, etc. So the indirect support was also framed in the report in terms of how UN agencies are conducting NECD through other means, including UN evaluations themselves. So we have here a recognition in the report that there's an increasing reliance, for example, on local experts to conduct UN evaluations, and that being a way to enhance national evaluation capacity, as well as involving national counterparts in different governance systems of UN evaluations themselves, like reference groups. And then some examples of joint and country level evaluations, as well as here agencies that use their evaluations with governments to pilot how national evaluation systems could be developed. So with that said, there were much fewer agencies that reported really using national systems to undertake their evaluations and leverage the capacity that is there. The report mentions in this context that only 6 UN agencies indicated having supported government evaluations with funding, technical assistance, or participating in steering committees. So there still is, according to the report, quite an important gap when you think about even the number of agencies that responded to this survey. There are, of course, examples where this is being done. UNICEF used a government evaluation terminology and systems to undertake an evaluation of Zambia's 7th National Development Plan. And there, of course, are other examples, but I think the point here is that there's still a limited practice overall. The report also uses, as I mentioned in the methodology, case study approach to kind of illustrate, at a more concrete level where NECD has progressed and how kind of that has taken place with the UN involvement. Just a quick overview here of the 6 countries that were part of the case study approach, with Costa Rica and Benin really representing the most advanced national evaluation systems among the group. Costa Rica having a national evaluation system active since 2014, as well as a platform that integrates different stakeholders. Benin also having a national evaluation system since 2007. And here the report notes that development partners actually provided support to the lead institution and main actors there in Benin that had then provided catalytic value in terms of Benin then taking forward that funding in moving forward from that point on. So I think that's a really important example to underline in terms of development partners providing that catalytic value. Morocco and is also mentioned here as having a strong leadership by the National Observatory of Human Development, but no government-wide system. So evaluation is even articulated in its constitution, but there still is more of a kind of patchwork national evaluation platform in that sense. And then other three examples, without going into too much detail, indicate that progress has been somewhat slower, and in some cases, such as with Sri Lanka and Kenya, there are no examples of national evaluations that have been conducted. And so here I think, again, it's just a snapshot of the incredible wealth of differentiation between different contexts, right, in terms of national evaluation capacity. And so maybe just moving to the next slide to underline some takeaways and lessons. So the takeaways here that we just wanted to underline quickly was that while there are some policies in place, as we've seen from these case study countries, and as colleagues are well aware in the countries in which you're working, implementation is still a challenge. Evaluations continue to be mostly commissioned by development partners with limited national ownership. And so here there's really a fragmentation in many ways also among the UN partners that can not only prevent national evaluation capacity from being strengthened, but weaken it. And so I think that's a strong point that the report makes, that there is really a huge responsibility here to improve upon this area. So maybe just jumping to the last two slides, here are the recommendations that point to, first and foremost, the importance of UN agencies to conduct their evaluations in a way that really is looking to foster NECD. The second recommendation, building on the General Assembly resolution, really calling for agencies and their evaluation functions to support ecosystems. So this can, run the gamut from providing support for diagnostics, training, and really looking at the kind of policy framework around national evaluation capacity. And then finally, really looking to enhance coordination and collaboration around NECD at all geographic levels. So today, I think just to close on the recommendation 1 in particular, this I think is the call to action of this practice exchange. This is the call to action and the reason of this practice exchange, to really focus on what UN agencies can do in response to this first recommendation. And so we have a couple sub-points that we'll be able hopefully to expand in our group exercises. The first being really embedding in country program evaluations, UNSDCF evaluations at the country level, a meaningful presence of national partners. Second, really fostering joint and country-led evaluations. So that is a key takeaway from the report. In countries that actually have strong and existing national evaluation systems, using their plans, guidelines, and standards in UN practice. And finally, practically speaking, increasing the numbers and strengthening capacity of local evaluators. Let me close on that, and thanks so much, and apologies for going a little over time.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, for this overview of the report. And now I would like to introduce three different testimonials that are going to conduct us through 3 different experiences, okay? I'm going to invite now Ian Goldman, Amalia de la Cruz, and Jenny Bonomi to open their cameras and to take us through their experiences. So you can please introduce yourselves and comment on the experience you are going to share with all of us. I think we start with Jenny.
I'm Jenny Bonomi, and I work for FAO Office of Evaluation. And I'm going to present what we do in FAO to involve governments in country evaluation. So it's about the first recommendation is really to share our practice and to learn more from others. Before starting, I just wanted to give some information on how FAO works at country level. As many other agencies, FAO develops with government a country framework, which is a document defining the priority areas for collaboration that normally covers a period of 4 or 5 years. This is done in a very participatory manner that involves all the technical ministries working with FAO, agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and also civil society like farmer organization. So what we do with our country evaluation is really to assess what was done over this period covered by the framework and to provide recommendation for the next cycle. So what we try to do with our evaluation is to keep the same participatory approach and really involve all these different counterparts in the evaluation. So I'm going to present the case of Gabon and Mali that are the two evaluations that are currently ongoing. In both cases, we established a steering committee. In Gabon, for example, in the steering committee, there are all the technical ministries working with FAO. And we also included the ministry in charge of evaluation. As in Gabon, there is a process to establish a national evaluation system. So we thought it was important to have them in our steering committee. And in Mali, that was a different situation, as FAO established a steering committee when they signed the country framework with government. And this steering committee was already representative of all the different ministries and farmer organizations, and there are also representatives from farmer organizations. So we decided to use this steering committee also for our evaluation. So they follow the implementation of the country framework, and every year they meet to make a point on the result achieved. And so they were very much informed about FAO activities. So we took the advantage of having this group, and we use this group. And what we did in both cases, we presented to this in the two countries to the steering committees the terms of reference to better shape the evaluation question. We also presented the inception report, and we are going to present in the coming weeks the preliminary findings from the evaluation report to discuss them before drafting the report. In terms of just two examples, for example, in Mali, the advantage there has been a huge advantage in terms of visibility. When the team presented the inception report to the steering committee, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Rural Development was there, present in the meeting. He provided many comments to the report. We reviewed even the sample of project we were going to visit, the geographical areas based on his comments. So this means ensure visibility, ensure the fact that your evaluation will be known also at high level in the Ministry of Agriculture, that is our main counterpart. For Gabon, also, we have a very nice consultative group with a chair that is very proactive. We organized a couple of weeks ago a workshop on outcome harvesting with different people that implemented from government that implemented FAO projects. So he was present and very proactive during the workshop. He facilitated the discussion. So he really helped us to, let's say, improve the profile of the workshop. He contributed to make the workshop more like visible and also more useful. And so we have advantages in terms of visibility, relevance, but also all the process become much more official. So this gives more power to the recommendation you will make in your evaluation report, because it's not anymore an FAO internal process, but even the recommendations are developed and will be known by all the different counterparts, and FAO will accept them, but in front of the government, so they will become much more binding. It's also increasing awareness of the different participants of the steering committee on the way we do evaluations. This is the case for Gabon, for example, where the steering committee is made by, all the members are DG in their ministry, so they can learn from FAO way of doing evaluation, and we can also learn from them. And there is also, we are also trying to find opportunities for national capacity development for the future, because we are in a discussion with them and to see what are their interests. So I see a lot of advantages. And by having this process, maybe the challenge I see is, as the recommendation says, is to make it really meaningful, because sometimes it's true that it becomes a bit formal, it's like a formality. So we are trying to find ways, and I'm interested to hear from you, ways to make it more meaningful. Just to say that this was a process, an approach promoted by our former director, and I think is very relevant. It really helps to increase also the partnership with government, between government and FAO for the future. And the last point is that we also made an effort to have a national expert in the team. The teams are led by national experts. And as FAO Office of Evaluation, we are just facilitating the process. But all the process is in their end. And there are also, in Gabon especially, young emerging evaluators that are part of the team. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. I think you gave also very good ideas for the group work later on. Now I'm going to hand over to Ian Goldman, who is going to talk us about an example of an evaluation or pilot evaluation of UNICEF in South Africa.
Hi there, everybody. So I was in 2011, I was asked to establish, first of all, a national evaluation policy, and then the national evaluation system in South Africa. And we started by meeting departments involved in evaluation, deciding that we needed to explore experience from elsewhere. We went on a study tour to Mexico and Colombia, including with our Deputy Minister and Director General. Based on that, we decided what the bones of the national evaluation policy would be. But also during that, we went with a group of departments that were involved in evaluation in South Africa. And one of them was the Department of Social Development, the Department of Education. And we decided that what we wanted to do was to pilot an evaluation quickly. And we decided to focus on early childhood development, ECD. And the Department of Social Development had good contacts with UNICEF, had been working with UNICEF for some time around ECD. And UNICEF agreed to support us to do this evaluation. So we had part funding from UNICEF. I think it was about half the funding. The rest we provided ourselves. And we were literally building the ship as we sailed. So we decided, well, how are we going to do terms of reference for our national evaluation system? So we developed some terms of reference. We put it out. In that particular case, we actually selected an evaluator we wanted to do it, who was an expert in ECD, who had been suggested also by UNICEF. And a local evaluator, by the way, not an international one. And the UNICEF then played a role in the steering committee. And while we were developing this evaluation, we actually said, well, how are we going to do the inception phase of an evaluation? We said, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. We did it. Then we undertook the evaluation. We said, how are we going to do a management response? We decided this is the way we're going to do it. Then we said, how are we going to do improvement plans? This is the way we're going to do it. And then afterwards, we issued guidelines on each of these systems and said, this is the way we're going to run the system. So we used this pilot actually to develop the bones of how the system would work. And UNICEF played a very positive role. They were, as I say, they were members of the steering committee. In fact, it was George Larray Ajay who went on to become the head of evaluation in UNICEF. And I think it was very formative for him, actually, being part of that process with us and really going through this journey as a participant. He played a very positive role. And in all these phases, as we were thinking about how to do these systems, George contributed and gave ideas. There were actually some other evaluation staff as well who were part of it, but it was a very positive role. And in fact, the evaluation did set up the whole methods that we subsequently ran, and the guidelines pretty much stood from then. And so I think it's a great example of how a UN agency can actually play this role in helping to build the system in a way that's really sharing. It's not token ownership by government. It's really a joint enterprise. There's actually a paper written on the experience, which I'm putting in the chat. And if any of you are interested. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. This has been very interesting. I'm going to hand over now to Amalia de la Cruz, one colleague of mine in WFP in República Dominicana, who is going also to talk us through a joint evaluation experience
Hello. I think it's very in line with what the colleagues had mentioned. Just a little bit of context in DR, WFP is implementing or has been implementing a joint nutrition program with the government, with 2 other agencies of the government. So after about 15 years of implementation, the whole program, the whole nutrition program decided to carry out a joint evaluation, more focused on the activity part, not in the impact aspect of the intervention, but more in how was it working, how was the nutrition component being implemented, and to draw a few lessons learned to continue with the programs. But it was especially relevant in 2020. As I mentioned, already 15 years had passed, but also we had a shift in government, so it was also important to have an understanding of what should be continue and what should be improved for the program to continue to be implemented. So as it was a joint program, but it was basically financed by the government, and it was at the local levels with health clinics. It was important to have a joint evaluation. We didn't want WFP to carry out the whole process, but as someone already mentioned, it was important to have a partnership in doing so. So the government was involved in the whole process for 2 reasons. Basically, to ensure the ownership of the results, but also to increase the knowledge on an evaluation process and to build capacities in this regard. To ensure the participation, the government representatives, they were part of the steering committee. With basically, even though the WFP was the president of this committee, but other representatives were also part of it. And we also define an evaluation reference group. So as part of the steering committee, the government representatives were able to revise and approve the terms of reference. They were also part of the selection committee that selected the evaluation team, and they also review and approved the evaluation products and the evaluation reports. Similarly, they had the voice when defining or when forming the evaluation reference group. This was also important because, as I mentioned, we were in a government transition. So sometimes, in that moment, it was important to have wide representation of the different entities that are involved directly or indirectly with the component of the nutrition component. So besides having them as part of the different of the structure of the evaluation oversight, we also, since the beginning and when designing the evaluation, it was perceived as an important component to have trainings and to have capacity building in terms of evaluation for the government counterparts. So when the steering committee designed the evaluation terms of reference, it was included that activities or that some activities should be focusing on capacity strengthening. In this regard, WFP, when contracting the company, the evaluation team, made sure to select a team that had previous experience in capacity building, especially national capacities. That was a key element for this sort of innovative approach to function. We had, sorry. I'm sorry.
Take your coffee, take your coffee.
So yeah, so as I was saying, it was important to have a team that had previous experience when doing capacity building, especially national capacities. So in this sense, the team that that the committee selected had a team leader that is a professor at universities that had different experiences before in this sense. So even though it wasn't the main focus of the evaluation team to carry out trainings throughout the whole evaluation process, in the inception phase, in the data collection phase, and in the reporting phase, different activities or different sessions were held to explain the evaluation process, and that also helped to put in context where the evaluation was. So we had the evaluation team to present the process, the concepts, the use of them, but at the same time they had this practical approach where they had to revise or they had to put into context what they were doing for their evaluation. So for example, in the inception phase, the evaluation team would present what is the inception phase, what was the purpose of having an inception phase, the different responsibilities of this phase, and then they will see that in action when revising their inception report. So it was, let's say, a practical and theoretical approach, and that worked very well. So just to summarize and to close up, we had the government participating in the structure, in the governance structure of the evaluation, both in the steering committee and the reference group, but also we had different evaluation, or different capacity strengthening activities throughout the evaluation. That help us to ensure the evaluation committee understood the process and took ownership of the process, but also that they were interested in having future evaluations. Right now, we are doing other evaluations with the government, and it's a result of the interest that we built in the first experience we had in 2020 and 2021.
Okay,
Over.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, the three of you. I think this has been very interesting aperitif for what is coming now. Okay, well, at the end we are going to have like a plenary on the exercise, and you are going to have a possibility to react to the different interventions. But let me please now explain what is going to happen now. We are going to work in 4 different rooms, okay? And I am just shared in the chat the link to the mural we are going to use. So I kindly ask you to go to this mural, but don't start doing anything because you don't have yet the instructions on what is going to happen. Just go inside. If you already have an account, you might need to subscribe or log in with your own credentials. If you don't have an account, you don't need to open one. Registration, it takes like 2 seconds, and they are not going to ask you any data. Okay, so don't worry. Because the idea is that you can work collaboratively responding to 4 different questions, okay? So room number 1 is going to work, listen carefully because you are going to choose your own room, okay? So you have an interest in listening what is going to happen in each room. So room number 1 is going to deal with what are the challenges in adapting the way we as UN agencies do our evaluations in order to foster national capacity development, and how do we address them. So you are going to look at challenges, why it is interesting to address those challenges, and how can we address those challenges. And you are going to work in room number 1 with Heather and Monica, okay? Room number 2. Room number 2, you are going to work with Michelle and Valentina, and you are going to respond to what are the benefits of involving government counterparts and how to make the best of them. Okay, benefits and how to make the best of those benefits. Room number 3, we are going to work with Grace and Michael, and you are going to respond to what are practical tips for smooth engagement of government counterparts in evaluation. Room number 3. And room number 4. With Renata and Yogesh, you are going to respond to how should UN evaluation change from the practice, management, and coordination perspectives to promote more ownership by country stakeholders and develop national capacities. So in the mural, you are going to find the 4 spaces to work per room. So if you join the mural, you can still read the main topic of the mural before deciding the room you want to subscribe in. Welcome back. So let's offer, because this mural is going to be open, okay? So let's give the possibility to room 1 to, you don't need to read the post-its, right? Because we all know how to read. So it's just for the speaker to do like a summary of the hints of your discussion. And then the rest of you, if you are inside mural, you can also produce your own post-its, okay? But the speaker of this group, adapting our way of working to foster national evaluation capacities, which have been the challenges and the solutions to address those challenges. An overview of your discussion, please.
Basically, as you see, we did not have many post-its. We were not very technological oriented, but we had a very nice discussion. I think 3 challenges emerged or that were discussed. One was how to really work on national capacities in evaluation when your agency does not have country presence and relies on other agencies and so on, which is a challenge to even launch the evaluation per se, and also to even contact national consultants. Second challenge is about time. Sometimes we have to do so many evaluations that then the time to really engage with national stakeholders, as some agencies have been doing, has been cut dramatically. So it's not really easy to go beyond just extracting information and presenting findings. And then the third challenge was more about the independence of certain evaluation offices that sometimes prevent to really engage with national stakeholders, because sometimes they are part of the people who are indirectly also evaluated and they have some kind of conflict of interest. In terms of solutions, we were talking about the need, for instance, to create a roster of national consultants. So these agencies without country presence could also benefit from other agencies that have already a network of evaluators in country. Also to maybe interact more among us, different evaluation offices or people in charge of evaluation to exchange information. And in terms of this part of independence, maybe associating the units that are not part of the design and implementation of the programs we are evaluating, but these units that are slowly being created in many countries that are meant to evaluate the programs, the public policies and programs that then we can reinforce, but they don't have a conflict of interest to what we are evaluating.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica. So as I said, the rest of the people can also write post-its, if you have reflections around this. For instance, I have seen one comment in the chat and I have put it here as a potential solution, okay, to address challenges. So feel welcome to contribute. Okay, let's do the same with room 2. Benefits. Who is the speaker of your group, Michelle and Valentina?
Basically, the discussion evolved about around 3 to 4 benefits that we identified. The first benefit of the joint evaluations we saw is to increase the ownership and use of the evaluation, and also to make sure that the learning is transferred. Actually, I should have started with saying that there was a question from one of the participants. Why are we asking this question? Because we thought that this was a standard practice in the UN. And what we had to point out is that the report actually found out that the UN agencies, funds and programs were not engaging sufficiently the national counterparts. So that was the reason for this question, because there is still a gap. So the first benefit, as I said, was about ownership, learning, and use of the evaluation. We also came to discussing that we need more evaluations and evaluators from the Global South. The second topic around which we discussed that involving government in the evaluation can be also the part of seeking for the sustainability, working on the recommendations with them together to see how to take this forward. And one of the suggestions was that having national voices forming the recommendations may help to better position the topic in the country. Then we also discussed about the possibility that there is not always national funding to continue with the programs, and we can take it forward to all the discussions that we had in involving the Ministry and Economy and Planning and so on in the evaluations. And finally, the third big topic was around the learning by doing, so involving governments into evaluations, and this was mentioned also during the contributions from Amalia, Jan, and Jenny, was that it can help understand the importance and create further demand for evaluations. However, this needs to be very carefully thought through how it will work. And finally, some looser topics and suggestions were involving auditors, as it appeared useful in one or some evaluations, as they are independent. I understand it was the national auditing body.
Thank you very much, Mishala. So let's move now to room number 3.
Yeah, we you can see here we focused a lot on just the tips, really, and the initial discussion was trying to understand, okay, as a first step, what are the elements or incentives that are driving interest, and how to kind of map those, understand those, and then build an evaluation process that responds to that. And so colleagues in the discussion talked about how an interest in learning and building capacity through the evaluation was something to build upon, making sure to target the right counterparts. And then we also had a separate conversation around the role that a government counterpart should play based on the given program or project that's being evaluated. So, for example, in some cases where there's mutual accountability, so the government counterpart is putting money into the program, that can really help dictate more of a decision-making role, where there's an expectation that the counterpart will be approving evaluation products, for example, and otherwise maybe playing more of a consultative role. And so here you can see some of the examples and tips around what that looks like. So I'll let colleagues add on to that if I missed anything.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I see Ian is sharing a policy brief on relationships and dialogue that fits very well with these points you were mentioning. Thank you, Ian, for that. So let's see room number 4.
We started discussing how, first of all, that different governments, different countries have different levels of evaluation practice and understanding and systems. So our practice management and coordination challenges can be different depending on the situation of the country. But we also acknowledge that our evaluation systems are geared towards us rather than being geared towards the countries we serve and we work for. So this is one main challenge. Regarding suggestions, one way to look at it and to find ways to involve government would be really to engage in a dialogue with our country counterparts in the areas of our agency's interventions, to identify those areas that of common interest for evaluation, so policies or programs that we could of common interest of the evaluation of our agencies and of the government. So that could be one way to raise the interest and start doing some evaluations jointly. It's not easy because we also discussed the challenges of our setups of evaluation offices, but it's something that we can do on finding some entry points, as also Yogesh suggested during the discussion, to find those entry points where we can find those common interests and engage some of the stakeholders at country level. Also, another practice we could change is in agencies such as NFAO, but also in other agencies, we have our technical officers that may provide policy support, or yes, different policy intervention or program support, and we should engage also with them to raise their interest and attention to evaluation, so that they can raise it with the governments on their side, so that we can have more ground for interest and for, yes, developing evaluations jointly and raising the interest of government in our evaluations.
Thank you, Renata.
Just to thank all the participants. And okay, as you said, Anna, the title of this session is "We Can All Do It." I hope you still think we can all do it. I think we had really good examples of at least some steps that we can take in our practice. And the idea of this EPE was really that every agency can do something to move along a national evaluation capacity development, even with different setups and in different areas of intervention. So what's next in this group? We are developing an action plan that we will, this year we focused so much on this report and on circulating and discussing this report in different meetings, different conferences, etc. So, and we are developing an action plan for the recommendations that we will present at the next AGM in January. But next year, we really want to focus on gathering some lessons and good cases and good practices that can help us all, like the ones we heard today from WFP, from FAO, from UNICEF with Ian. So to really gather those lessons and those good practices so that they can be used and inspire other agencies and the whole UN systems to advance on national evaluation capacity development. So thank you, and I leave it to other colleagues of the working group if they want to share anything else. And we will look at also the poll, poll number 1, to see also for next year what kind of topics we can promote in next EPEs or webinars, or more open webinars, or restricted to UNEG members like this one.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the UNEG group to trust me again for the facilitation of this meeting. It has been a pleasure, and well, good luck to everybody, and I am looking forward to see the good results of this national evaluation capacity development.